And welcome back, everyone, to another edition of Inside Career Technical Education. I'm Ann Baldwin, one of the hosts of this program, along with Jim Bologa, who is the president and CEO of YTI Career Institute. And we're so excited to talk about one of the programs that you offer in Pennsylvania, Jim, and that is the Veterinary Tech program. And I just want to share my little experience because you and I took a trip up to the campus a while ago. And I got to actually go in and meet some of the students and meet some of the instructors. And I had the chance to meet Carly Love-Sipe. And Carly's going to be with us on the program. But first, I was just so impressed by just the facility and the career-like industry model labs that you have in vet tech. And there were animals there, too.
Yeah. No, it's impressive. I mean, we ended up acquiring YTI back in December 2013, and they had started the program, Veterinary Technician program, back in 2012 timeframe ish, and again put a lot of money in terms of capital expenditures into the industry modeled lab environment, and it's what you'd expect if you went to your veterinarian's office. I mean, I would say in some cases it's probably a little bit nicer than some, but
right.
Yeah.
And so to hear more about that and to talk with really the person at the helm of this program, again, Carly Love-Sipe, thanks for being on the show today. And I guess our question is, tell us a little bit about the program that you offer. And Jim already kind of teed it up about what kind of a facility you have.
Yeah, great. Well, thanks for having me. And you're right, our facility is pretty much what you would expect when you walked into your own veterinary hospital where you take your own cats and dogs. So we have a fully functioning veterinary clinic, if you will, where we can do anything from as simple as a physical exam, vaccines, blood draws, all the way up to monitoring and running full general anesthesia on cats and dogs, which we do here on a regular basis because we're actually anesthetizing dogs and cats to spay and neuter them for our local shelter. So our students are having the opportunity to participate in those skills and also helping the community by doing so.
Yeah, that's awesome. So Carly, maybe talk a little bit about the program length, the degree that you get, and maybe some of the major components of our curriculum.
Sure. So the program is a 21-month associate degree program. Students start out learning some of the basic knowledge that they'll need to work their way through the program, like anatomy and physiology, chemistry, some math, because they do end up doing some mathematical calculations for drugs when they're working out in practice. So they start off kind of with the basics, if you will, and then they work their way up through there to the point where they're actually working hands-on in the lab, where learning how to do blood draws and catheter placements in dogs and cats, but then they're connecting that back to the knowledge as to why. Why is it important to be able to do these skills successfully? What benefits do they offer to the dogs and cats and the clients that they're working with? We also have a program where the students learn large animal handling and restraint, and they practice that with horses, cows, goats, and sometimes we work with alpacas and sheep, which is pretty fun. So they learn how to restrain those guys, handle them, and also how to draw blood and give injections to those large animals as well.
I just want to share a funny story. Well, I don't know if people think it's funny. I thought it was funny. This weekend, I after Ann and I had sort of been out in the York campus visiting you and the other team members, it was interesting that I turned on my TV and Dr. Pohl came up, and he's this veterinarian who actually goes out and sort of helps large animals, and it's sort of interesting to hear you talk about the access that our students get to participate in large animal experience. So that's pretty cool.
So is there like a local farm or a horse farm that you go out and work with?
Yeah, we go to several different local area farms. We see horses that are working with students in another setting. Actually, they're physical therapy horses or therapy horses. So the students that participate in this program are using these horses to as like an outreach. And so our students get to go there and see this facility and work with these horses, which is really neat. But we also go to a local dairy farm, so the cows are really comfortable with being handled, and the students get to see how that process works. A local beef farm, which is always a little bit more interesting because beef cattle aren't as regularly handled, if you will, as dairy cows are, so that can be a little tricky. The students get to see us, trying to wrangle some beef cows. And then, of course, you have, like I said, the alpacas, which are, they're really fun and sometimes spit. So that's always a good laugh if that happens to one of us or one of the students while we're out on the farm.
That's great.
Yeah. Is there any reason why they do that? Because we were actually many years ago, I was at a farm and they had alpaca and they actually ended up spitting on one of my nieces. And I think it probably traumatized her because she was pretty small at the time. Is that just sort of a defense mechanism for the alpaca, or are they just
They're herd creatures, so they want to stick together, and if you try to separate them like what we do when we need to work with just one of them, they get kind of upset sometimes. But yeah, it's a defense mechanism. They're trying to make you stay away from them because they'd rather you didn't do whatever you're trying to do. So,
right.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Well, another question I had, Carly, one of the things I was also very impressed with is when I visited your program there on the York campus, were your students. There was some real good hands-on learning. I saw some CPR that was being demonstrated on a large stuffed German Shepherd, stuffed animal. I should say stuffed animal. So, I was really impressed with the caliber of the student there too. And it sounds to me like with all the different things you need to know from the math, from the science, from the biology and everything, you really got to dedicate yourself to a career like veterinary tech.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. So it's more than just the book knowledge that you learn while you're here that makes a good veterinary technician. And while that's a big part of it, the reasons behind why these students are learning to do the different skills that they're doing is important. But yeah, you're right. A dedicated person who is going to be able to go above and beyond just their basic job duty, working for their patients, for their clients, to help them. And that's generally the calling that brings most students here. So I think that it's a good fit, that these students just in general want to help, and they want to see animals be helped and help to make them well. So it fits well when you have students that are already dedicated to animals and helping them when they come here, because that's what they need to be successful.
Can you talk a little bit about the employment side and maybe the interplay with externship and how all that works?
Sure. Yeah, so our students have the opportunity at the end of their program here to go out on a 12-week-long externship where they're working at a local veterinary hospital to kind of solidify and really bring home the skills that they've learned while they were here. And a lot of those students actually end up being offered jobs at the place where they externship afterwards. So we get a lot of students right off the bat, right after graduation, working out in clinics. But that's not the only job opportunity for a veterinary technician. It's probably one of the first ones you think about, right? Because that's where you're used to seeing a veterinary technician, is where you take your dog or cat. But general practice isn't it. So we have students that can work anywhere where there are animals, for the most part. There are jobs in research facilities, zoos, aquariums. We have students who are interested in more of like the research aspect of what we do here in veterinary medicine, because we are also public health assistants. So we help with keeping track of any sort of animal-borne diseases that are out there with the USDA. So there are jobs in that sort of area as well. Being a veterinary technician probably has one of the widest ranges of different career paths you can take once you get this degree, which I think is pretty awesome.
When they talk about, taking the relevant math skills, in terms of as it relates to, your profession. And again, I often come back to this where, many of us, as we sort of grew up and went through school and may have gone to, on to post-secondary education, we were in these general education classes that, never really sort of connected the relevance to where you ultimately would end up. And I find that just it's really, in talking with students, that they really appreciate the fact that they, when they get out in the real world, they actually understand how these calculations work, and obviously they can do the calculations, and so it's meaningful. I think for the students to not be overwhelmed, and so often you hear folks are just overwhelmed by math or science or whatever, and I think it's really it's a great program. I'm always impressed every time I go out there. I'm just the facility, again, I mean, industry modeled and really quite impressive. And unfortunately now during COVID, we're not necessarily doing on-campus tours, and it's probably an opportunity for us to video record that lab and get it up on our website. But again, we have starts 4 times a year, sort of following the seasons, the fall, which we're in right now. So if there's a prospective listener who has some interest in this program, there's still time for our fall. Obviously winter, spring, summer. And if folks, want to find out more about this, they can go to yti.edu. There's a lot of information on our website. They can apply right there online. They can get an interview right there online, schedule an interview. So we've tried to make the enrollment process as simple as possible in this new normal that we're operating in terms of being, all digital, if you will.
Absolutely. Well, this was really interesting. Carly Love-Sipe, I want to thank you so much for sharing such great detail on the veterinary technician program up at your York campus. And again, we encourage people, there's so many different options throughout the course of the year to get started in a career that's really, emerging and fulfilling. And if you're interested in that, again, as Jim mentioned, go to the website. All the information is there, yti.edu. And of course, we can't leave without thanking all of you for tuning in to this edition of Inside Career Technical Education.